Welcome to the podcast that's dedicated to helping business owners prepare their business for exit so they can maximize the value and exit on your terms. This is the Exit Insights podcast presented by Succession Plus. I'm Daryl Bates-Brownsword, and today I'm talking to Simon Morton. I'm going to say from Eyeful Presentations, but let's get into that. Welcome, Simon. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today.
Fantastic to be here, Daryl. Thanks for inviting me along.
So I alluded to you used to be with Eyeful Presentations. Where are you now?
Well, I am actually still at Eyeful, but it's not my baby anymore. The baby has moved on to new owners, something I'm sure we'll get into, but owners that I know and have known for a long, long time because it's the employee group of Eyeful. We went through the employee ownership trust process. We'll talk about that in a lot more detail, but they still let me in the building, which is lovely. And I'm now working a couple of days a week, allowing me to do some sort of minister with that portfolio, but using the many grey hairs you can see I have, really to bring my experience, be a sounding board, critical friend to the new board. I'm still on the board, but really probably more in a chairman type role, and getting the opportunity to flex my muscles in terms of developing some new solutions and services that we want to roll out to the customers. But yeah, there's Eyeful version 1, and we're now Eyeful version 2, and my role in that is very much different to what it was.
Okay. So you said you sold it to the employees through an employee ownership trust, or EOT as it's known over here in the UK. And just for listeners who aren't based in the UK, an EOT is where the trust acquires the company, and the employees are the beneficiaries of the trust. And the trust has to have controlling interest of the business, and if it takes over controlling interest of the business, then the founders who sell their business to the trust can get some generous tax advantages, but you have to sell more than a controlling stake of the business. And I think you said you sold 100% of the business to the trust in one fell swoop.
Yeah, it was 100%, and there was good reason for that, because you're absolutely right. Sort of when you get into the detail and into the weeds of how these things work, it has to be over 51%, and a number of people do exactly that, 51%, and then they keep a substantial stake in the business. For me, the reasons of doing this were personal as well as wanting to do something good for the guys that got us to this position. And I felt that if I still had a small holding, 10%, 5%, whatever it might be, I think the phrase I've used before is you can't be a little bit pregnant. You're either in or you're out, and this was my time to be out. And so for me, it was support absolutely everything that the guys do, but it's their baby now, and I want to be their biggest cheerleader and support them as much as I can, but it's theirs. Okay.
So, Simon, I'm a nosy guy, so I've got a stack of questions. Can we start at the top? And what I mean by that is, at some point, when did the business, the transaction occur?
So that happened, so we're just into February 2023, and it actually happened on the 1st of September last year, 2022. And that was, because I'm a soppy old thing, it's our wedding. It was my wedding anniversary, and my wife was an important, as any founder of a business will know, your partner is in it as much as you are. They just don't get the plaudits and the parking space outside. So it felt only right that we did it on a date that I wouldn't forget, because I would never ever forget my wedding anniversary.
Good man. So less than 6 months ago. And how long, what was the lead-in period from that September date of becoming employee-owned, the transaction happening? How long did it take from the point from when you decided, I think employee ownership, the EOT route is the way for me? What was that time frame?
Yeah, so it was, I suppose it came in two parts, really. So I looked at it, kicked the tyres of EOT, probably pre-lockdown and all of the weirdness that happened there. And on my first very initial look at it, I thought, I don't see why anybody would do this. It seems madness. So what you do is you give up your asset. You don't get all of the money up front. That very asset that you've just given up pays you through the future profits of that asset. So why don't you just sit on the asset and just continue to scoop up those profits, and you've still got the asset? That made perfect sense. I was struggling with that as a concept. So I sort of ignored it for a bit. And then lockdown did funny things to lots of people, and it certainly gave me the opportunity to reflect on why I did this in the first place, set a business up and what have you. And starting the business, growing the business has been a wonderful adventure. I wouldn't change it for the world. It's been absolutely fantastic. But really the catalyst for doing it was to kind of plough my own furrow and make sure that I never lost the balance of the most important thing in my life, which is family. So growing family. My eldest, sort of was born 3 months after starting the business. So there's a real kind of she was the reason that it all started in the first place. And it suddenly occurred to me through lockdown that if I'm not careful, they'll be at university soon. They'll be leaving the house next, and then suddenly the reason for me doing all of this kind of has escaped me. And I've only got an X amount of time left. And anybody running a business, we're not a big business, 3 million turnover business, about 30 people. So not a vast business, but it's time consuming. And so post lockdown, there was the family stuff going through my head. There was some personal sadness as well. I lost my father. And I recognised through that lockdown period how incredible our people are at Eyeful. And that sounds horribly saccharine, but when you as a business face something like that, it can either pull you apart, it can be a them and us thing of, well, it's your problem, hand out the payments and make sure I'm looked after, or as our team did, really galvanised together. Communication bizarrely got better through lockdown, trust in each other, transparency, all of those great things happened and got better through lockdown. So after lockdown, there was a bit of a sort of a post-traumatic stress disorder, sort of delayed PTSD, when I finally took a breather and thought, okay, now's the time for me to make sure I spend more time with my family whilst I can. I'm not young, but I'm not particularly old. I want to enjoy the things that my dad never really got an opportunity to do in retirement. Let's try and get some of that stuff happening. And the people around me are amazing. So what can I do to support them? And that's when we revisited the EOT as one of 3 options for me to start that succession plan. Answering your original question, apologies, we'll do a lot of this. Answering your original question, sat down with the guys probably just after Christmas of 2021, so early part of 2022. I had a leadership team, 2 fantastic guys, Luke Reed and Lloyd Carter, who have been pretty much running the business for the last 18 months, 2 years anyway. I said, guys, I think it's time for the old boy to take a step back, which surprised them because they thought I already had. Because I was working kind of part-time anyway. And they said, this is time to make it a little bit more formal. These are the options we've got on the table. Went through them, and the one that appealed to them most, but also to me and Lisa, my wife, was the EOT option. So that was January of last year. Incredibly long time.
We've got kind of, I guess, a 12-ish month time frame. You mentioned there, Simon, that you considered 2 other options as well.
Yeah.
What were they?
Being not particularly imaginative, trade sale. It was that was okay. This is what you do. You build a business, then you go out and you try and sort of find somebody to buy it. And a couple of things there. It was good to have that as my default setting, which is we're going to sell it to somebody that will value our business. And by having that default setting, it prompted me to do things, really valuable things earlier on. So building that leadership team. I'd heard of horror stories of founders kind of, without wanting to be overly flowery about it, kind of finding themselves locked in gilded cages. They've got this brilliant business, they're earning good money, everything's comfortable at home, but they can't get out of it. And I didn't want to find myself in that position. So getting Luke and Lloyd, developing them, they've been with the company a long time, joined at very junior levels. As they grew, it was like, you've got your management team, you don't need me. So when you talk about things like earnouts, no need, because these guys are running it, I'm not. That was my thinking. So trade sale was one option, and the other option was PE-backed management buyout type thing. And I shared both options, all three options with Luke and Lloyd upstairs, actually, in our boardroom. I said, look, these are the options that we've got on the table. Trade sale. And they both went, don't really like the idea of working for somebody else. We've got something very special here at Eyeful. The culture, the people, the trust, just the fact that we have a fun time. And I'm sure other companies have exactly the same pride in what they've built. But we think we're special. And the idea of us being plonked into another organisation and that potentially being diluted or mangled in some way was very concerning. So they both kind of wrinkled their noses a little bit. The interesting one for me, and this probably demonstrates something about generation change as well, is they're youngish chaps, sort of 30s or so, and I thought they'd go, brilliant, let's do the MBO thing, because that's a quick route, if you get it right, to making a lot of money. And certainly in their shoes, at that time in my life, I probably would have opted for that. And they, again, didn't like the sound of that. And it kept going back to, it's about the business that we've developed. It's about the employees. It's about the family that we've created here. And if you get investment externally, suddenly you've got another person checking out how you're doing, trying to change things. And they said, look, we like working where we are. We like working with you and what you've created. Why change it? What's the third option? And then I explained the EOT. And very tellingly, they afterwards, we caught up and spoke about it a couple of days afterwards. And they both said, look, we love the idea of the EOT. We just kind of need to know what the catch is, because we can't see a catch. And I went, no, me neither. So let's explore it a bit more. And that's when we started it, taking it very seriously.
So when they were considering the options, I don't know how to word this, but do you think there was anything in the fact that with an MBO, they were taking a risk, whereas with an EOT, you're taking the risk? And
possibly. I mean, it's they've been brilliant in actually sort of sharing. Whenever we talk about the EOT, obviously with the employee team, but externally as well, is that they said, look, we got a good deal here, because the liability kind of sits with Simon and Lisa, and that's fine. It kind of goes back to the previous point of the importance of having a really strong leadership team in which you have implicit trust. They are not only. I can not only trust them to run the business well, I can trust them to run it better than I ever did. Since they took over the reins, the business has grown. People are happier. Customers are happier. Every box is being ticked, and so the ego of the founder going, well, nobody can run it quite like I did. Actually, that goes out the window if you've got your leadership team pretty much doing leadership stuff by the time you make a decision. Because I've never gone, oh my God, what have I done? Am I going to get that debt paid back? Because I have absolute faith that, if the economy tanks, if horrible things happen, they'll do a better job at weathering that storm than I could. And so the company's in a much stronger position and has got better leadership with those two running it rather than me.
Okay. So you built the management team. You were already thinking about getting exit ready because the trade sale was your default position and you didn't want to have any sort of earn-out arrangements because you'd just seen in the past other business owners being locked in with earn-outs.
Yeah.
And we all know that earn-outs just don't work. I think there's a stat, there's more than 50% of earn-outs, that just don't get completed. It's horrific. It's tragic. And it's sad.
Not enough people mention that either. Sorry to butt in there, Daryl, but it's really easy as a founder, and I experienced this many moons ago now, probably 7-8 years ago, when I was tired and I just thought, okay, well, how do I get off the treadmill? And I went down the basic, and I won't name names because that's unfair, but we all know that the brokers write us a very large check. We'll create a very nice IM for you, and then because we've got a really big database and they're chomping at the bit to buy you, it didn't go anywhere. It cost us a chunk of money that I could have used elsewhere, and at that point, nobody ever said, "Oh, by the way, the earn-out thing? You'll probably get screwed on that," because most people do. So the ignorance around that is really dangerous, and it's great that you call that out like you do.
Well, yeah. Look, and that's the reason that Succession Plus exists is that most business owners only ever sell one business. Baby boomers, the Gen X, they sell one business, and they've got a lot of their future wealth. Their wealth is tied up in that one business, and they think of it as their pension, their super fund, their funding for life after work. And they don't know that, that if they don't prepare their business properly, and you've got some advice and put a management team in place, which is the big first thing, if they don't do that, they're going to have to do some sort of earn out and take all the risk. And business owners or entrepreneurs, they just struggle working for someone else, or they're just really tired, like you were saying you were, and they just don't have the energy to sort of keep going for another 3 years at the pace required, because as soon as someone else owns the business, they can move the goalposts.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
So, it's avoidable is the point. And, earnouts are avoidable if you prepare. So you did that. You had your default position. I could fall back to a trade sale. But now that I've got a trade sale, I'm going... a trade sale as an option. I'm going, okay, so I know what the business is worth. It's going to cost me a certain amount if I go down the trade sale route. It sounds like you had a dabble in there and engage someone for a bit and sort of let's say invested some money in your own education.
Yeah, let's call it investment. That certainly makes me feel a bit better about that. And that was a fair few years ago, so way before we started things seriously. Yeah.
So you did some learning and you acquired some knowledge around what that might look like. And then you've gone, hang on a sec, I can go down the EOT route. I can agree a similar valuation that I might get via a trade sale. Yep. I'm selling it to friendly buyers because we know who they are. I'm taking a bit of a risk because I'm not getting the money up front, but if I'm doing an earn out, I'm still taking a risk. So that, they pan out to be equal. I can, in some ways, soft exit myself out by transition out on friendly terms with the right gang. I keep the culture, and one of the nicest things of all is I can say thanks to the people who helped me get there, and give them the business effectively.
Yeah, that's the thing. I was chatting about this with somebody the other day, and what's a sort of an unclumsy way of saying this is, as part of the transaction, naturally, any sort of surplus cash was part of that transaction. So on day one, we didn't get the value of the business, but there was a very nice immediate cushion that came our way.
Okay.
And I immediately felt like I'd won the pools because it's not enough for me to have the retirement and maintain the lifestyle that I want, but it's not bloody bad. And that was good. The biggest thing, though, bigger than the money, and it gets stronger and stronger every day, is the ability to sleep at night knowing that I've done the right thing. So even if there wasn't an earn out, even if a trade bar had gone, here's a crazy number because we love what you do, I'd still struggle because of the relationship I have with, and I think most founders do have with their team. If I'd said, right, I'll take the cash, no earn out, and it was taken over, I couldn't look them in the eye. I'd struggle with it, and that might be daft. That might be some sort of weird thing for me, but it's great to be able to sleep at night going, we've created something, we've set something up that will benefit all of the people that are working incredibly hard and have worked incredibly hard all this time. And it's not just for them. So again, sorry, I'm bouncing all over the place, but when we did the transaction, we obviously had a bit of a party because that's what you'd want to do. And it was really important for us that we invited their families as well, because we know that if you're a designer, a project manager, a storyteller, whatever role you are within Eyeful, those poor souls, I'm careful what I say, but those poor souls have worked late into the night. They've worked weekends and they've given up and sacrificed things for our customers, which kind of comes with the territory in what we do. And it's because their partners allowed them to do that. And we wanted to thank them as well, because that was really, really key. So a meandering way of saying, I can't put a value on the peace of mind and the sense that I've done without wanting to big myself up, I've done something good for the people that deserve it.
Yeah. And it's a choice, and it's a good choice. So how, Simon, at some point you had to agree on the value of the business that the transaction would go through for. How did you arrive at that number?
It was a bit like going out and getting quotes on repairing a roof. We went out and got 3 quotes. Went out and got 3 valuations. Spoke to our accountant, who pointed us in a couple of different directions. And there was the organisation that works with us to guide us through the EOT process. They also provided us with a valuation. And it was a bit like getting quotes back for repairing a roof. One was incredibly high. I was like, I don't know what they're smoking, but it's probably good stuff, because no way are we worth that number. And then there was one kind of in the middle, a little bit less than middle. And then the lowest valuation was the company that we turned to do the actual transaction, and that was the valuation that we went with. So we went with the lowest valuation that we got, and the reason was very simple: is we had a number. Lisa and I had a number that we wanted to hit. Once we hit that number, great, we're happy. And it wasn't, let's grab some more, because frankly we didn't need it. And we didn't want to, and this is really important, we didn't want to hamper the success of the business going forward. It's a fool's errand to go, great, let's agree a massive number, and then the company stutters and falters because it's trying to pay you back. You never get it paid back, or it'll take you forever to get paid back. And the poor saps that are paying it back don't get to see the benefit of that sort of going forward.
Okay. So you agreed a number for the transaction. There was some surplus. The business had some money in the bank, and used that money, not all of it, but kept some working capital in the business. But they used a chunk of cash to go, look, here's down payment.
Correct.
Approximately as a percentage of the value, like what are we talking? 10%, 50%?
Oh, good question. Probably about 15%.
15%.
Yeah.
The other 85% is going to be paid off over a number of years.
It is. Again, we never want to make it particularly easy, or not easy. Make it simple. So again, one of those moments when you wake up in bed at 3 o'clock in the morning and you have a brainwave. I put myself in the shoes of the employees that the trust was running on behalf of, and it suddenly occurred to me that if I'm having to work, probably 5 years is what we've budgeted for to get that payment done.
Right,
I'll be working hard over those 5 years, and it felt wrong that over those 5 years they work hard and they don't get to see any of the benefit. Yes, they will do in years 6 and 7, but that didn't feel quite right. So we tweaked the repayment terms a little bit. So every year up to a certain level, that's a standard repayment. We'll take 100% of that. Anything over a certain level, that's when we start basically dividing it between repayment, because we want to overpay as quickly as possible, obviously.
Yep.
But then the employees get the other 50% of that sort of lift.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Is along the way, there are some other advantages or some specific advantages to the beneficiaries of an EOT of getting some cash-free or tax-free rather bonuses, and we've got to get the language right. So you guys have elected to go, let's not dangle the carrot, but let's give them some immediate benefits along the way so that they can feel the value of going EOT.
Exactly that. Yeah, and that was important to us. The other thing that we did is it was always part of the plan, but actually we kind of changed the order a little bit, is we were looking at setting up an EMI scheme anyway, so an options scheme for sort of key employees and fast growth employees and what have you.
Yep.
And what we did is I thought that option was off the table as soon as we started looking at EOT. And what was great was we discovered that actually do the EOT. So actually 51% is owned by the trust. 49% of the 100% that Lisa and I sold, the 49% has been allocated for an EMI scheme. And we've already got names against 30% of that, 30% of the 49%, if you see what I mean. So, so we were able to, again, there's the short-term win for everybody that's eligible as part of the EOT thing, but then also to build in some of the EMI benefits as well, because we want people feeling good about this. It's not, and it's natural for people to go, it's kind of feels the same because the same people are leading it and the name's changed a bit, but what else has happened? So we've put things in place that people will feel that.
Uh-huh. So, Simon, is it the management team that are the key influencers, the drivers of the business for this next phase? Are they the ones who have been allocated EMIs? Yep. And there's...
it's the management team and a handful of other sort of key members. So it's not just the two guys that are on the board. It's a spread across the business.
Okay. And there's 19% of the business unallocated at the moment, if my maths is correct.
Yeah, your maths is better than mine, but yeah, it's exactly that. 19%. It's sort of sat there on the shelf, waiting to be used to reward people as they continue to grow, sort of go through their career, and we want to reward them for that. What's lovely is, just trying to think, I don't think there's anybody that's benefiting from the EMI scheme that didn't start at a junior level somewhere within Eyeful and have worked their way up to these more senior roles. So it's keeping it in the family and rewarding the great people that we've got.
Okay. And have the employees, and I know it's early days, but have the employees received any benefit yet? Like as a bonus?
Not yet. And that's an interesting part of the communication process. So the transaction went through on the 1st of September. And what we want to be, and so we had our first EOT trustee board meeting only last week. So it's the first one, and it was great because it was an opportunity. We've got two employee representatives on that board. We've got me as the founding director. We have Luke, who represents the board of directors, the business side. And then we have an independent board director as well, a chap called Jeff Lermer, who's our accountant, brilliant guy and massively valuable in that whole process. A big area of the conversation was how do we ensure that we communicate with the employees so they feel, because they are, engaged and the business is being run on their behalf, but also defining that fine line between being a shareholder, having a shareholder interest in the business, but not running the day-to-day business. So making business decisions. For example, we're moving offices now. We built into the EOT contract that if we moved offices outside of the Greater Leicester area, that was an EOT discussion. But we're moving down the road, actually deeper into Leicester, and it's a good thing for the business. It's a good thing for a lot of people, not everybody. A few people are understandably, will have slightly longer commutes and what have you. But that's a business decision, not an EOT decision. And again, it was good to kind of define what areas are responsible. So there's a lot of accountability still. So accountability on staff morale and staff mental health and all of those sort of things. That was discussed at that board meeting, but we're not talking about who gets a pay rise and who doesn't. That's what the board of directors of the business, Luke and Lloyd, fundamentally, that's their responsibility because they run the business on behalf of the trustees. Yeah.
So that leads us to moving forward because the trustees, the trustee owns the business. So you could say, well, all the employees through the trust, the beneficiaries, own the business, and the trustees look after the beneficiary's interest. So now that you're EOT, what's changed about the business? Whether it be management style, culture, employee, like what's changed?
Everything and nothing. So
elaborate, please.
Yeah, exactly. So everything is in terms of, I think, and we still haven't quite cracked this, but I think everybody recognises that when they talk to a customer, when they support a colleague, whatever it is, they are doing it for the greater good now, rather than going, if we do a great job, the big guy with the grey hair at the top of the business might dish out a few sort of extra pounds at the end of a year for a bonus. That decision doesn't come to me now. So somebody described it as a benevolent dictatorship back in the day, and I was benevolent, but fundamentally it was also the dictator as well. So that has changed. We've seen a change in accountability. That's, let's say, it was a problem, but there's a real sense of people recognising that they're not clocking in and clocking out. A few did, but there's a real sense of, no, I'm part of this thing and I'm moving it forward. In the early, we still kind of have a problem with this now, but the days after the EOT, we were having to kick people out of the office of an evening, going, look, go home. I know you're committed, I know you're excited, but that's not sustainable. So it's the understanding of those changes is an important part of it. What hasn't changed is the fact that we still want the great culture. We still want the thing that made it a success to continue to be a success. So, I think if you walked into the office, you'd probably not spot a huge difference in the way that people interacted with each other, and because we never wanted to change that. There haven't been dramatic changes in systems or processes or any of that stuff because it wasn't broken. Actually, it was working really well. So why change that?
What about the level of financial information that's shared with employees? Has that changed?
Yes and no. So at the EOT board level, you're sharing, sort of some detailed numbers now about spend, about net profit, about those sort of things. Going back to the lockdown was actually an interesting prompt for us to be a bit more transparent about the health of the business. So I'd always kind of kept those numbers relatively close to my chest pre-EOT because there was a little bit of concern that if I go, well, good news, we've had a profitable quarter, I'd end up with a long shopping list. That very unfairly was my assumption, but that's what I thought. And equally, I shared with a previous iteration of the management team when we'd had a not so great quarter. And they said, please never share those numbers with us again. Ignorance is bliss. So Luke and Lloyd now in their leadership role, they are very transparent. Communication's a really important part of that process. But they will share headline numbers, how we're doing against budget. They'll share the budget. As an aside, but I think it's an important one to mention. For example, this year, post EOT, we set the budget for the year ahead, and our budget is to do what we did last year. No crazy growth, no 20, 25%, 30% growth. It was actually, you know what? We've had a brilliant year this last year. Let's do the same again, but this time let's make it less manic. Let's make it less stressful for people to do that number. And that's an important message to get across. Now, if we had a trade sale or if we'd sold to a PE investor, they'd be going, yeah, this is all good, but we need to see growth. If we don't see growth, what's the point of the investment? If we don't grow any bigger than we are, but we're still the best paying, nicest, funnest, most innovative, whatever long list of superlatives you can come up with, company to work for, that will do everybody here fine. It's not about being the biggest dog in the kennel, I don't know if that's even a phrase, but it's about being the best at what we do. And we've always said, and more recently said more and more often, we want to be the business where people go, wow, you work there. But I've heard great things. Yeah. How do you join that? Yeah, we want to be part of a club that people are desperate to join.
That's brilliant. So, Simon, if I'm to wrap up, here's what I've heard today. You got to the stage where you were feeling tired and wanting to get that family balance, and you started considering your options. You figured out what was important to you in terms of what you wanted to achieve in your transition. And after considering trade sale, MBO, you went down the EOT option because you felt that gave you a good deal. It was a good transition, and it was a really good thing to do for the employees and the people who helped you get there. Transition period fairly smooth because it's a friendly acquisition. You had a management team that you trained up beforehand, and you knew you were handing it into a safe pair of hands, so it wasn't a handover then hope and pray. You've maintained the culture. You've kept involved at a lesser extent so that you can transition yourself out and help mentor and guide and dabble in the things that you like to, but with no longer any formal responsibility in the business. And the business is continuing from an operational, running a commercial entity perspective. The business chugs on as per normal, and from an outsider looking in, they're probably not going to notice anything other than if they go to your website and it says, yippee, we're employee owned. Mm-hmm. What have I missed, and what's the key message that you would love listeners of this podcast to take away from our conversation today?
That's one hell of a summary. I wish I'd put it as succinctly as you had there. So that's really good. I do think that you need to know why you're doing what you're doing. It's have an outcome in mind, and it isn't just about the money. The money is important, of course it is. It's the reward that you get, the financial reward you get for all the hard work that any founder has put in that people don't really know you do. But we've all been there, and we've all got the battle scars to prove it. But once the money reaches a certain point, personally speaking, it wasn't about making that number as big as I possibly could. It was get to a point where that was our magic number, and now let's figure out how we could do other good stuff. Yeah. The reason I'm still doing this 2 days a week is because I love this place. I love the people I work with. I love our customers. And to divorce myself from it on day 2 would be too much for me. And so all of those things, the ability to sleep at night, which, as I touched on before, all of those are worth more than the money. Once you've got your number, then start being creative. Yeah, I'm not saying give it away, but equally don't get greedy.
Well, what I'm hearing is that you've managed to orchestrate an exit on your terms, which is what every business owner wants. So congratulations, well done. Absolute pleasure talking with you today. Thanks for sharing your exit insights, Simon.
I had a great time. Thanks, Darren.
Cheers.